This panel, I would say, is was closest to my heart. Beyond words, the Armenian Diaspora Networks in Action. But after that talk by Armen, I don't know where we should start. So I'm actually humbled to be moderating this panel, since every member of this panel has recognized capacities in Armenia and has acted on it in a very useful way. So if I could interject my own little bit of my story there. I went to Armenia as the director of the Ali Khanian National Science Laboratory of Armenia. The laboratory is the most impactful or renowned institution in the region. More publications than any neighboring countries, which isn't saying much given the location, I guess. And more physicists per capita than any country in the world. But man or woman cannot live with physics alone. So I had gone there basically to try and broaden the reach of fundamental sciences to applications. So my panel here has done a tremendously outstanding job. And when I met Hagop Panosian of ARPA, I told him he's my hero. And of course, being an Armenian man, he didn't respond to that comment. But perhaps we can start with Hagop, who has been in Armenia since before independence of Armenia and has continued until very present through ARPA to impact all kinds of research institutions and educational organizations. So perhaps we'll start with you, Hagop, if you can tell us a bit about what you've done and how and so on. ARPA.
Thank you, Ani, and thank you for the opportunity, for the invitation. I started in Armenia as a Fulbright scholar in 1987 and spent there a semester with my family teaching control systems in the Polytechnic and the Yerevan State University. And then, of course, I met with the famous Victor Ampartsumian and several other very well-known scientists. And then I was the president of the Armenian Engineers and Scientists of America, which I founded. And then we started working together and organizing the first World Congress as part of the Engineering Society in 1989, actually at USC. And then we introduced the scientific community to the diaspora. There were over 200 scientists from all over the world participating in the Congress. And that's how our relationship started. And then after independence, I thought, well, now we need to help Armenia in just more than engineering. We need expertise from all fields. So we organized the ARPA Institute, which has expertise from all essentially various fields. And we started working together with the government of Armenia, had a request back then to organize an energy conference to establish or reactivate the Medzamor nuclear plant. And we helped organize the conference. We invited 27 experts from all over the world. And we had, there it was decided that Medzamor need to be reactivated. And that's how our activities started with Armenia, and we continued since then. We have so far, I would say, at least 15 we consider important projects that we have achieved. We started with the health, education, and lifestyle program for students in the 7th and 8th grades, where we taught the benefits of being healthy, the drawbacks of smoking and heavy drinking and so on. And then we established the first modern blood bank in the Yerepuni hospital. Unfortunately, it was privatized back then, but it serves its purpose back then, helping the wounded from the war. And we continued working with the institutes and universities, obviously. And of course, we always had our contacts with the government and had their blessing. And we established, thanks to Ania Abrahamian here, the first Class 1000 clean room in the Alekhanian National Lab to do advanced research in material science and quantum technology and other areas. And it is now, I can proudly say, is functional, although it still needs a lot of instrumentation. And people are donating various instruments, like Professor Arab Karyan. He donated quite a few instruments. And we still need a lot more. We also, of course, had established a newly Center of Excellence for circuit design in the Polytechnic University, where we're teaching advanced circuit design to students. Right now we have 47 students taking the classes, and of course, the main idea is to have advanced circuit design and research in the university. We also have a new educational program in various regions of Armenia. We have 19 schools where we teach STEM education, and especially new inventions from young scientists. And the first prize is $10,000. And this year we have 2 winners, and hopefully the president of Armenia has promised to be present and give the awards. And also we have a new, more slightly different program on disinformation. We have a team of experts that are developing AI-based algorithms to gather information about disinformation produced by our neighboring countries against Armenia, and then to counteract and combat the disinformation, which we believe is very important. We're working with the government of Armenia, especially with the Prime Minister's office. They have a team that are working with us. And we work with the universities, as I said, and the various institutes, and we continue to do as much as we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Agop. In the United States and also around the world, there has been a lot of attention to the innovation part. So the United States presently invests something like 3.5% of its budget on science research and hopes to get the innovations that drive the economy of this country. That's also important for Armenia. And Yervan Zoryan, who is the CEO of Synopsys in Armenia, was telling me a little bit earlier, perhaps you can share with us how you started Synopsys from the idea of startups.
Sure, thank you, Annie. Yes, from the idea of startups. So my involvement with Armenia was a little bit later than Hagop. After Armenia became independent, I was in Bell Labs, in AT&T Bell Labs. Some of you know the organization. So we found out that Armenia and the technology sector were quite prominent before independence as well. So I wanted to leverage that a little bit to help Armenia and to help ourselves. So I remember back in 91, end of 91, I wrote a letter to the president of HBU at the time, Louis Simon, sensitizing her about the fact that we need to leverage that in order not to lose the talents that we have in Armenia. And she encouraged me to start something, to collaborate with AUA to do that, and to start by a group if I can. And I did that. I found the talents. I found people in my domain. So I'm in the microelectronics domain, the chips domain. So I found the talents, about 20 people who were in that domain, working in Mergelian Institute, in the Academy of Sciences, in the universities. And we created a lab in AUA. In fact, that relates me to USC. I flew here to talk to Mihran Ababian personally, and we established how we have to run it, how HBU will fund it for a number of years first. And then we'll make it such that it is sustainable, and it carries itself and goes on. In fact, we did that 2 years after I took already projects from Bell Labs, then from Intel to do research over there. But that was just a start. Soon after, in the early 90s, we started taking startups from the US, R&D, in Armenia, in order to grow there, in order to scale there. And gladly, that was a nice thing to do, because the first startup back in '94, we took HPL there. I was on the board of HPL. Instead of having an R&D operation in India, we thought it would be best to have it in Armenia. And we hired the first few employees, and then we built on it. In '95, we took another one later. With Viraj, we went there in year '99, and so on. So those startups that were small initially, became public, some of them, others did not. But they became very good places for multinationals to come and build their operations. So when you mentioned Synopsys, yes, Synopsys, we came to Armenia 20 years ago, 2005, and what we did is we didn't start from zero. The same thing with other multinationals as well after us. We were the first big multinational to go there, but we started acquiring those smaller companies that already had built an operation in Armenia, that already had 100 people, 50 people, 250 people. So with 4 acquisitions happened here in California, we were able to collect a number of good talents to do high-end R&D and start that back 20 years ago, and we build upon that as we move forward. Synopsys is a company in the chip design domain, so we supply building blocks and software tools for chip design, and today most of the complex chips are the AI chips. We spoke about the accelerators. Most of the accelerators that we see today are built on Synopsys building blocks, and I'm proud that many of those are built in Armenia. So we're able, over time, to increase our group. And today we have an R&D operation of Synopsys in Armenia, over 1,300 very good engineers, all highly educated, well prepared, and they provide state-of-the-art 2-nanometer building blocks for us that create our accelerators, that create our self-driving chips, that create our mobile equipment chips. So chips, I think, are very important. They are the fundamental backbone of our electronic systems. Any electronic system that you use have its backbone in its intelligence of the chips, whether in its computation power, in its memory, in the security it provides. In every aspect, it's very advanced. So having Armenian scientists involved in it is very important. So in terms of science and technology, in terms of innovation, we have to see the number of patents that we create every year out of the work that we do in Armenia. Not the purpose is not the patents, of course, it's to protect it. But there is lots of advanced work that would happen in Armenia, and we are very proud of that. So I think that's a very good way of putting a bridge between Armenia and California, if you want, if that happens to be our scope today, by which we are able to take the most advanced capabilities out of Armenia and bring it here as one of the multinationals, us. There are several other multinationals as well. Now, since we started that work, we were able also to establish in Armenia a side track, that is the business culture. So today, having multiple multinationals in Armenia, such as AMD, such as Cisco, such as NVIDIA, several, Siemens. So what we have established this nice business culture, and many people who come out of us, out of our big organizations, create their own startups, and then become successful. Some of them become multinational themselves. But that track is very nice. So in the last 10 years, we see the fact that there are lots of new companies coming out, and many of you are involved with. And I see some of us here who have created companies that are very successful in robotics, such as the Robin robot, with somebody who has started from Synopsys, graduated from Synopsys effort, and Garen has created this nice robotics company. That's what I see. I'm sure there are many others that I don't see you now. But it's a business culture that comes out, and I think we can be all very successful with that. However, in Armenia, we have limitation of new talents, sufficient talent. The pipeline of people that we need, the pipeline of good talents that we need are limited. We need to build that carefully. We need to build that systematically. And I can comment on that if you want later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Yervant. I've competed with you for people to hire when I was in Armenia, but I was happy for them because you were able to reward them better. But around the world, it's an issue, especially for newly developing countries or newly coming on the market countries, that they have some ideas and some new inventions, but don't have the infrastructure to take it to market. So one good side of having those ideas and bringing them elsewhere is that it creates that economic success. But the bad side is that those jobs are not in Armenia. But now you mentioned the workforce issue, which we come to Armin to help us with. If AI can fill in the workforce that we need to become a STEM force, because the population of Armenia is now under 3 million. And in a desire to become a STEM economy, we need to have a lot more STEM workers. Can we just fill that in with AI-trained, not co-pilots, but the ones who are taking over?
I guess realistically, yes, right? I mean, big companies, I feel like I'm just scaring people today. They're not really hiring junior folks, right? This is a very common trend right now. The market isn't great if you're coming fresh out of school. And the reasoning is simply because of this, that one senior engineer now that you pay a $200 a month subscription is probably worth 5, 6, 7 junior engineers. For Armenia, this is relatively good in the sense that if there's widespread, again, adoption before other countries are able to adopt, there are economic gains, of course, to be made. So it's quite an interesting kind of positioning to take, that small countries can, in some sense, now compete with countries that have larger populations because you can just buy your way into intelligence. So functionally, yes. I mean, the actual operational of, the operations of how you do this is pretty tough. There are countries, usually countries that have like oil funds, like Norway, for example, that do things like, they gave everyone like a ChatGPT subscription. I mean, like things like that kind of will work. And especially in Armenia, I think that's a relatively good idea that you can do at, again, relatively cheap costs. But it's a force multiplier unlike anything else that we've seen. So I think that's true. The other thing I will say is that like when I was at Facebook, we had different groups. So there was like an Armenians at Facebook, right? Picking a random country, there was like Turks at Facebook. And the amount of people they had in their groups was only 2x larger than ours. So in some sense, it's not that we don't have talent in the diaspora. There's just not an effective utilization within the country itself.
Thank you very much. I thought the fact that Armenia is a small country, but that in a field like machine learning or artificial intelligence, we really could be disruptive and move ahead, and it could contribute specifically to the security of the country. I've thought that for some time. And what is your view on what the situation is in Armenia? Hagop and Yervant and I have been there for many years, and I understand this is a new voyage for you.
Yeah, I mean, no, I was born, after all the incredible work. But the key thing is that on the foundational layer, unless you're U.S., China, or maybe Israel, you cannot compete. Like the capital requirements are very, very large, and I don't think you necessarily want to compete there. I think the places that you compete is you find, like I mentioned, like very specialized application areas that are near and dear to your heart, and you build tech there. That is probably the core way that I see that Armenia can develop a strong AI ecosystem. To be honest, the talent there is pretty good. I mean, I've been lecturing about machine learning in Armenia for like 2 or 3 years now. The people there are smart. We hired people from there. We have, like, if you include our full contracting team, I think like close to 24 people that are in Armenia. So it's definitely possible to increase the scope, but there needs to be a very direct focus. It can't be something very general, like, I don't know, you shouldn't be building like AI for like, I don't know, like sheep shears or something, right? Like it needs to be something very specific. Like there's wide scale opportunities around AI for defense. That's a very big investment area now, especially this year within the US. So there's some synergies that can be developed there. There's big opportunities to be done around things around security like ISR, so intelligence, signal, reconnaissance. There's very interesting opportunities there, but you need to be very, very strategic about which ones you pick, especially with the limited capital that's available.
I think all members of the panel are perhaps familiar with the priorities that Armenia has set in the sciences. And are you familiar with them, actually? I know Yervant is because we're on this committee.
I'd love to hear him.
No.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I can mention it
yes.
if you want, yes. While the technology in Armenia, as you have seen, came bottom up, each one of us did something close to our fields and so on, so I wouldn't think of it as top down. But recently, the government would want to work less tactically, more strategically, let's say, in this particular field. They want to see what are the fields that are necessary for Armenia strategically and how can we plan accordingly. So Armenia created a council, a science and technology council that Annie and I happen to be on, of 25 people, mostly from Armenia, some from Diaspora, to look at what are the fields that are necessary and to act accordingly. And you identified 5 different fields. That's why I think the point here to be made. They happen to be AI, microelectronics, chips, not surprisingly, autonomous machines, robotics and so on fall under that, of course, drones and any other things, space-oriented activities. Biotech, life sciences, and finally quantum, which is a little bit more forward-looking, but we need to be in. So these 5 fields have been considered as the important fields that we have to work on. And to work on in the sense of education, research, and industry. So all 3 of them. You cannot do one without the other. If you only educate or you do research, you don't have the industry, it doesn't work. If you have the industry and you don't have the research or the education behind it, it doesn't. So this chain of 3 steps is important there. For that, we're looking at different programs, and ASOF is active in that as well, helping us, Vache, in establishing in all these 5 fields. We need to establish the proper education in the universities, the proper research centers, and then, of course, the companies. And the companies happen to be perhaps startups or the multinationals that we have to bring. And when we're working with on the KPIs in this council, by the way, it is chaired by the Prime Minister. It has in its 3 important ministries that relate to this, technology ministry, education, and economy, plus the universities and the industry well represented. Now we're looking at the KPIs. We look at how can we measure it? We measure it by the number of companies, by the economic impact that it creates, by the new jobs that it will create. So there are a number of ways of looking at it. But it's worth mentioning a couple of numbers perhaps, that this industry today has already 40,000 employees, the tech industry. And we target to have 130,000 in 5 to 7 years. Next thing to think of is the GDP impact. While when we started a long time ago, it had less than 1% of the GDP. Today we are close to 8%. It's 7-point-something% of the GDP of Armenia, which is an important percentage given where we are today. So these things are measurable, and we have to look at how we can go there.
Thank you very much on that, Yervant. I will. Yes, please.
Yes, I think, of course, university and education is very important, but I think in order to have the right educational input from the schools, it is more important to to develop the school system. There's the high schools and middle schools and even the elementary schools, and to educate them so that they can become the right students in the universities. And I think that is also another factor that the ARPA Institute is trying to do with our educational program, and also with the science fairs that we established in 2017, actually. We did the first science fair in the Academy of Sciences, and after that, we promoted that with the educational ministry, and they adopted it. And right now, they do the Kidutian Paradon every year. And we also help them to participate in the International Science and Engineering Fair that is held every year in the United States. And so they are now coming and sending students to that international science fair. So if the students get the right educational background in science, not only science, but also any kind of even social sciences, how to solve problems using the scientific method, I think they will become better students in the university. Education is very important. And also we try to educate the public outside of Armenia by our panel discussions and presentations that we do online. The ARPA Institute has every month a panel discussion related to Armenia or Armenians in general. And if you are interested, you can send me your emails and we'll send you information. But it's not only important to educate the public in Armenia, but also the diaspora. I don't think the diaspora people really are really aware of what's going on in Armenia and what needs to be done and how they can help.
Thank you, Hagop. Armen, you mentioned that you expect AI to make significant contributions in the fundamental sciences. You also mentioned the pharmaceutical industry. Was that a pro, it can help, or a negative in terms of that was an area that was too complex for AI? I just want a clarification on that, because Susan Jerian is here. We've discussed there is capacity in Armenia for pharmaceutical production, and AI could really help in that section. I first ask you for a clarification, and then if you could comment on what could be the contribution of AI in the fundamental sciences. Is it in the stage you indicated that is there is a co-driver, a co-pilot, versus the future where the co-pilot is not needed?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, like AI for pharmaceuticals is like a very, very big field all of a sudden. And I have a lot of friends that have went and started up companies. I think an example is Evolutionary Scale. I think they're the people that have the best protein folding models in the world right now. So there is opportunity, like humongous opportunity, to significantly lower the cost of drug discovery. I think like to discover a drug in the US is like a $2 billion, like of course amortized across all the failures, but it's a $2 billion cost. If we can get that cost down to like 100 million, the way they explain it to me, we can have a level of personalized therapeutics that is just not possible today. But this requires, I think, AI at the core level. In terms of what Armenia can do, again, likely you don't want to compete with any of the big labs like isomorphic labs that are trying to do kind of the whole end-to-end drug discovery process. But you can imagine that maybe you care about like retrosynthesis, right? Which is like, okay, give me the steps to create this molecule, right? Like maybe there are models that can be developed there. There's still definitely a humongous arbitrage opportunity for even the type of intelligence, given how complicated the pharmaceutical chain is. And I also think this applies more or less everywhere else. The same thing in math. I think you're seeing like world famous mathematicians. Like I think Terence Tao talks about AI a lot, where he says that it's PhD level now, but he doesn't know what it will be in 2 years. We use it in our work. I've actually gone pretty lazy. If there's a problem, I just ask. I tend not to think about it. So I think it will seep into pretty much any field that is either has a lot of data which for protein folding there is a lot of public data, or that is easily verifiable, which through simulations most physical things are pretty verifiable.
The part that scared me was that you could see a future where the intelligent worker could also be eliminated, as well as the automated work that would be done. So what is our choice if you participate in the co-pilot program while AI learns your skills, and then then they don't need you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say generally what we've seen, there's a name for it and I'm blanking on the name, but things that take us on our evolutionary path the longest will be the things that are last to get automated. So things like, telling cancer from an X-ray, it might be very intelligent work, but that's probably one of the very first things that's going to be automated. But getting a robot that can traverse as good as a dog is probably maybe 10 years out. So the core thing is that knowledge work will be automated first, and this is why OpenAI is very explicitly targeting replacing 50% of knowledge work. What happens post-labor, I think, is a philosophical and economical question. I'm not going to try to answer that. I have no idea.
I fully agree. The intelligent work, the creative parts, the more creativity you need, the less automation would touch it first, right? So whatever is repetitive will be done first. The co-pilots are the ones that are doing today the repetitive work, things that we have done them before, we know how to do them, we can do them faster, but domain knowledge is important in all of these things. Whether we go into the medical field, whether we go to the microelectronics field, always the domain knowledge matters. For instance, the AI work that we are doing in Armenia today, in chip design, needs the domain knowledge. You need to know how to design the chips in order to create first the co-pilots, then to create the automation for it. Today we have over 200 different programs in Armenia inside Synopsys that use co-pilot and automation capabilities. They create them there because they have the domain knowledge. Without having the domain knowledge, you cannot take advantage of AI, right? So you need the combination of the two. So I think in every field, we need to bring our domain knowledge and put on top of it the AI capabilities that are given to us in order to reach there. For that, we need to think in an AI sense in advance, in data analytics, in order to be able to reach there. That's why I think, back to what Hagop was saying, education is critical. If we start early on with our kids to teach them in the sense of AI, not only just Python programming, that will be automated. In certain aspects where they can understand the factors, they can understand what kind of data they need, how they will collect them, and so on, and then they can put on top of it their domain knowledge and take it out. The university programs that we have to create our workforce did not contain that initially. We created just the domain knowledge initially. We work with 5 different universities, and we produce lots of talents every year. We work with the Polytechnic, with Yerevan State, with the French University, Europe. The reason is to create necessary talents with the chip design knowledge. Fine. We have 450 people in our university program only preparing bachelor, masters, and the PhDs. But it's not sufficient if we don't have also the AI knowledge coupled with it. That's why we had to enhance all of that with AI courses in the university to combine that domain knowledge and the AI know-how to create the necessary co-pilots in advance. Not only that, but also for the kids, we have started a program. So we do have today a program that is funded by us, by Synopsys Foundation, and we disseminate AI courses at the school level. So at the 10th, 11th, 12th grade, in order to make it accessible from everywhere in Armenia, we work with the AGBU Armenian Virtual College, happened to be a very successful project, in order to be able to take those courses, not only to Yerevan, but to schools in the regions, to start also learning AI from early on. I think that will help us a lot to have that knowledge, that education in advance, to move forward.
No, I have myself applied for grants from the Department of Energy and using AI to be able to predict nuclear properties that we haven't seen. So I resonated with the comment that it can, perhaps AI can see trends that we have missed by looking at all the data. But I think the role that all of you have played in Armenia is to give some hope for the students and for the kids. When I did a survey of students in Armenia, I found out that the most popular course was physics. And I didn't ask them, so they weren't just saying that for me. So I think it was becoming an issue of them thinking in the future, where will I work? But all of this could change all of that. And then when they see a hope of they could do science for work, and that's a major role that ARPA is playing in all the different schools, as well as Synopsis. And you're giving lectures at YSU, and is that right? At AUA? And
Yeah, I think it was AUA last year.
yeah.
I will also say there is a I think it's going to become a very common failure mode for countries. I think take a look at India, for example. So India has a humongous contracting and services industry, and you usually contract out things that are not super complex, right? And so what we're seeing is that AI is more or less destroying these types of service-based industries. So for Armenia specifically, you don't want kids that go learn JavaScript and then join a contracting company to make websites for a living. This is a danger. This will disappear in the next couple of years. So we should really strategically think about what are the opportunities to attract kind of capital from essentially from the world that will not be automated in the next couple of years. Yeah.
And what are those? Well, we have you here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very hard question. Part of it is, again, strategic investments in deep tech, but not deep tech that's, I think quantum mechanics is super interesting, but, it's always 5-10 years out from being useful, right? But things like therapeutics, rethinking therapeutics from the bottom up, things like hardware, right? I think these are the key important kind of verticals to target. I think a very clear thing is just take a look at either China or Israel's playbook on what they want to develop, because China went through all that, right? They went from they sewed clothes, and now they're building better models than we can build. Their manufacturing is better. And kind of in the U.S., we pretend that, it's cheaper from there because the people get paid less, but that's not true, right? So these types of manufacturing processes at scale, that's likely going to be one of the core technologies that will be maintained.
I was under the impression that there wasn't much, relatively super tremendous capital investment requirement right at the start, but definitely some investment in compute power to handle any one of these challenges. Were you going to say something, Hago?
I was going to say that building the mentality is very important, and building mentality comes from the bottom up. In other words, if you build the right mentality, the right attitude as a student, they become better graduate students, they become better inventors, and even industrialists. So I think that mentality of, first of all, belongingness. In Armenia, there's a lack of belongingness. I mean, that this country is mine, and I have to build it attitude is lacking. And if you build that from the beginning, the students learn that this is my country, I'm responsible for everything I do, and I can, if you give them the attitude of can do, I can do whatever I want, whatever I can dream, then that attitude, I think, is a very important factor in the future.
Yes. When I went to Armenia in 2018 as the director of Ali Khanyan, I said I come with a list of 40 physicists from around the world who are willing to come to Armenia give lectures, do research, and participate. Well, I think out of the 40, we probably did have a dozen or so people come. But I do want to turn our attention a bit to this ASOF new program, this Armenian Society of Fellows, where we're taking on the responsibility of handling the challenges of coming to Armenia, giving lectures, interacting with the children, with the students at all levels, and also doing research. Armenia has now started this research mentor overseas, what's that, distance mentoring, yes. But I think so much more is possible. And all of us in this room, and many more of us, can do a tremendous job. We've all voted with our feet. We've gone to Armenia. Let's continue to do it, and I invite any of you that might be interested in joining Armenian Society of Fellows for our program to actually go to Armenia, teach classes, mentor research, take on students, and be a part of the success of our nation, fully utilizing what capacity the Armenian nation has, both in Armenia and also in California together. Thank you.